Is there a best, when it comes to deliberate exercise, is there a best form of exercise for fat loss?
For fat loss, probably not. And this is one of those things that is a little bit, the public perception is that if I get in and I weight train and I get in and I do my cardio, then I'm doing what I really need to do to lose body fat. And I like to point out the fact that you probably don't use those two modalities to really burn calories. They're not very good at it, particularly weight training. But that's not why you do it, and that's not the benefits that it provides. Building more lean muscle has a massive amount of benefits: bone health, cardiovascular health, health for reducing injury risk and illness, and all of these different things in longevity and quality of life. We look at things like the muscle mass index, and the muscle mass index is monitoring the amount of muscle mass that an average person has. And when you look at that, the correlation between that and quality of life and longevity is much better than the standard things that we use, such as BMI. And we've used that for decades. And, when we're focused on just losing body fat, I think that we forget some of the other really beneficial things that we can gain from some of these other modalities. And so when we talk about what can we do specifically to lose body fat, the answer is just general activity levels. But these other things we want to add in because over time they can make our lives a lot easier. And what I mean by that is when you have more lean muscle mass, you have a lot of ancillary benefits that will add into that body composition that you're looking for to begin with. We secrete a lot of different things from our bodies that are beneficial when we resistance train. We secrete myokines that are proteins that aid in cardiovascular health, brain health, mood, metabolic health. We secrete extracellular vesicles that contain genetic strands called MIR1. When MIR1 is in muscle tissue, it hinders muscle growth. When we resistance train, it actually releases it from that muscle tissue, allows us to unlock the ability to build lean muscle. But what's even cooler than that is it then travels to adjacent adipose tissue. When MIR1 is in adipose tissue, it increases lipolysis. So not only are we allowed to build more muscle by doing this, we increase fat burning efforts as well.
Wow.
And even more importantly, having more skeletal muscle allows us to utilize and store glucose more readily. So one of three things is going to happen when we take in excess glucose. We're going to either utilize that immediately, we're going to store it in skeletal muscle tissue, or we're going to store it in adipose tissue. And so by having more skeletal muscle, it essentially acts as a metabolic sink. It allows us to store that in the skeletal muscle tissue rather than putting into body fat reserves. And so there are certainly different situations where one over the other may be really beneficial. In modern life, we store enough in adipose tissue as is. This is not caveman times where storing stuff in body fat is really important because it can, improve our ability to survive over time. Calories are not at, calories are at a premium now. We're not focusing on, oh my God, I need to find some more calories.
Yeah.
So in this day and age, having more skeletal muscle can be a very beneficial thing from a metabolic perspective because it staves off metabolic problems. And this is why we may see certain people like the skinny fat phenotype have real issues with metabolic disorders. They have pre-diabetes levels that are pretty high. They've got diabetes levels that are pretty high, and pretty soon it goes from being skinny fat to being obese. And so having all of the skeletal muscle tissue in play from weight training can be very beneficial from that body composition perspective. So I don't want to downplay the benefits that it has, but will it really help directly in the acute time frame for fat loss? Probably not. But you look better at higher body fat levels because you've got more shape from the muscle. It protects you metabolically. It technically increases your metabolic rate a bit. It's about 10 calories per pound per day, so it's not anything major, but over time that really adds up. And it increases confidence. And so if you add all of these things in together, you're much more likely to promote a healthy lifestyle. You're much more likely to keep it going long term. And you're much more likely to be successful.
And it helps to boost metabolic health, which is something that we're hearing a lot of today with regards to the public health or chronic disease crisis that many Americans and increasingly people around the world seem to be struggling with aspects of their metabolic health. Maybe you can speak to that.
Well, this goes back to it being a metabolic sink. When you have the ability to utilize glucose and absorb glucose in a different manner than essentially just shuttling it straight to your fat stores, you prevent yourself from going down that prediabetes route. And so this is a real way to have your body act as a sponge to absorb all of that and prevent some of these issues that others fall into. And like I said, this is irrespective of overall body fat levels in a lot of manner, because we see these very skinny people have prediabetes and start to shift into that. And so this is a benefit, whether you feel like you're prone to it based on your body composition or not. It's an important thing to look into.
Yeah, people have differing capacities with regards to how fat they can get before they start to show signs of metabolic distress, right? Like
there's certainly a genetic component to it. Yeah, a genetic component to it. How much your pancreas can handle production of insulin to be able to handle all of this. And at least initially, it's funny because we always talk about insulin resistance being a bad thing, and yes, it is. But at least initially, it's a body's compensatory mechanism to prevent body fat gain. Because what insulin does is it shuttles glucose into tissue, right? And so it's either going to shuttle it into skeletal muscle, which is what we want, because insulin can be beneficial there, or it's going to shuttle it into adipose tissue. Technically, the optimal situation would be if insulin was resistant at fat tissue and sensitive at muscle tissue, because then it would all be going into muscle tissue. So insulin resistance tends to kick in as a body's defense mechanism to prevent more glucose from being stored into body fat. Unfortunately, this causes all of those problems with, downregulation of insulin control over time, and then ultimately leads into diabetes.
If you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.